I'm Sydney Flynn, and I'm a tomboy, which probably is not a surprise to a lot of you. But as a tomboy, I have to admit, when I was a child, I was in love with princesses. I wanted to be a princess, and I loved the movies. I watched every single one of them. This is actually my brother and I one Halloween. And so my love of princess kind of got me wondering as I was given this assignment. How exactly did they impact me as a child? By watching them, what did I learn from them? Why did I love them so much? So, I studied the feminism and the princess story. So why the Disney princess? The princess character, an archetype in film, literature, and multiple other mediums, has consistently been the embodiment and exemplification of femininity that reflects socially desirable behavior of how women should act from the culture that produces it. So these princess stories kind of teach their audiences how to model themselves by reflecting the cultural expectations of the roles and responsibilities of women. Now, Disney, which is probably the biggest name in the princess industry, has significant impact over what is taught to young generations watching the movies about how women should act. So, the link between the changes in the Disney princess and the changes of feminism, which is two very influential waves of feminism, which I'll talk about later on, the link between those two can kind of be emblematic of the evolution of the teachings of feminism to the younger generations. And today I'm going to highlight this link by kind of comparing two of my favorite Disney princess movies, Cinderella and Mulan. And both of these princess stories are going to kind of give you an insight into how the feminist movement has influenced the teachings. And both of these movies reflect, reinforce, and instill that culture's meaning of femininity, because each generation and nation has reshaped and retold these tales to reinforce the dominant beliefs of their time and place. So, Cinderella. Cinderella was produced and created in 1950. It was the second Disney princess movie ever made, and it immediately followed the first wave feminist movement, which is kind of shown in A Woman on the Left. They attempted to emulate a woman who had a strong female support community, self-control, and a powerful identity that she creates. Interestingly enough, Cinderella, which immediately followed this movement, contradicts every single one of those ideals. Yet, at the time that it was produced, it was widely and eagerly accepted by audiences. It was loved all around. It was probably one of Disney's most popular movies at the time. Now, this is kind of interesting. Like, if it contradicts the ideals that feminist movements were trying to make at the time, why was it so popular? Well, that's because at the time that Cinderella was produced, the social ideologies hadn't conformed to the feminist ideologies. We as a society hadn't really accepted that yet. We were stuck in the traditional conventions. So, kind of going into Cinderella a little bit, she's immediately introduced as kind of a dreamer, specifically a dreamer of romance. She spends the entire movie humming romantic songs, thinking about true love, and dreaming of her prince, who she believed would come and sweep her off her feet. So, to the audiences, women should be a dreamer of romance, not of ambition. Similarly, Cinderella is kind of the token princess for being kind and helpful. That's pretty much what she's known for. But is it really kind and helpful, or is it submissiveness? She continuously does exactly what she's told, with a smile on her face, without standing up for herself, even though in many cases what she's told is not beneficial to her in any way. So Cinderella, her personality is almost pushed into non-existence as she does what everyone else tells her, but yet the audiences associate this behavior as being helpful and kind, whereas in reality it's submission. Now, most disturbingly about the Cinderella movie, a common theme throughout the movie is female competition for male approval, specifically based on attractiveness. Cinderella is described as the most beautiful girl at the ball, envied by every other princess there. And her beauty gives her value and gets her attention of the prince. So Cinderella obviously kind of contradicts every one of the first wave feminist movements, and it actually stifled the progress of it, because in this romantic tale, it transmits young women an alarming prophecy that marriage is an enchantment which will shield her against harsh realities outside the domestic realm and guarantee everlasting happiness. So from this, Cinderella kind of showed society, women are simply domestic. They should be in a domestic role, and that's what they should do. So Cinderella actually stifled all the progress that first wave feminists had made at the time. And this was released in 1950. The feminist movement didn't really gain traction again until 1963, when a woman known as Betty Friedan wrote her novel, The Feminine Mystique, which kind of gave light to women's feelings of insignificance and purposelessness. And in that movement that was started by Betty Friedan, they actually attacked the princess stories, claiming that women should be aware of the implications and ramifications of watching and supporting these movies. And so Disney kind of recognized the changing social ideologies, because at the time we started to accept this belief, unlike before the Cinderella was released. So Disney kind of gave a nod to the feminist movement and came out with a second wave of princess movies, one of which is Mulan, one of my favorites. And Mulan is immediately unique from other princesses. In the beginning of her movie, she struggles with meeting her family's expectations. She struggles with bringing honor to her family. While marriage is an aspect of that, to bringing honor to her family, that's not her main concern, which is uniquely different from other princesses. And a pivotal moment for her character is actually in the very beginning of the movie when she sings the song Reflection, in which romance is clearly not at the forefront of her mind. She's searching for self-actualization, kind of a self-purpose, which is very different, and as you can see, goes along with this second wave feminist movement. Now similarly, Mulan actually is kind of given some male characteristics, which are typically not at all for the princess. The prince generally kind of portrayed these characteristics. She's described as emotionally stoic, physically strong, assertive, athletic, and illustrated as a leader, even toward men, and her superiors at times, more than any other previous princess. In many cases, Mulan saves her combatants, she saves her commanding officer, and she acts as almost the male hero, which is very atypical at the time. So immediately Mulan is kind of instilling in females that are watching it, you have the power to be the hero, you have the power to do something and be a part of your story, rather than Cinderella, who is very, very less active in her story. And romance is present throughout Mulan's film. However, it's more of an undertone until the very end of the movie, in which romance is brought to the forefront of the audience's attention at the very end, when the prince goes up to Mulan and is attempting to ask her kind of to be in a relationship, or you don't actually know what he's trying to ask because he's acting very sheepishly. So he's taking on kind of a feminine aspect there. So he acts sheepish around Mulan, and Mulan has to be the one to comfort him and have the confidence to ask him if he would like to come to dinner with her family, in which he accepts. And interestingly, in Mulan, there is never actually an on-screen kiss between the prince and the princess, which was very unlike, I think it's one of the only princess movies that doesn't show a kiss between the prince and the princess, which is very emblematic of this second wave feminist idea. So, Mulan, kind of, as I've talked about, Mulan shows some male characteristics and the prince shows some female characteristics. So Mulan instills in its viewers' minds different gender expectations in which there's kind of increased androgyny among the characters. So females can do more like males do, and males can do what females do. So it's kind of changing up exactly the traditional convention. Now, the princess story has clearly been affected by social ideologies. However, we need to be aware that mediums, like literature, film, any type of medium, they transmit conventions to their audiences, and they have an impact over the ideologies that are accepted by society. Because these the second wave princesses in which Mulan was a part of, because they were released, the younger generation grew up seeing that kind of new ideology, and that has led to further progress in the feminist movement. That is how the feminist movement has gained the traction to be where we are today, where there's the no-hate movements and kind of the movements with rape and everything like that. So, in this instance though, Disney was able to subvert the conservative traditional ideology of early classics to incorporate contemporary discourses regarding sexuality and power. So, I have a question to pose to you. Knowing how much films and mediums can influence your ideologies and teach you something, what have you been letting medium teach you lately? Thank you.